The night air over Granada was cold and silent. Above the sleeping city, on a hill covered with dark trees and burning torches, stood a palace unlike anything the world had ever seen. The Alhambra. A fortress. A royal city. A dream carved into stone. But behind its breathtaking beauty was a story filled with fear, ambition, betrayal, and survival. And tonight, we uncover the untold story hidden inside its ancient walls. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because this channel brings forgotten histories back to life, stories the world almost erased. Now, let us travel back nearly 800 years. The year was 1238. Southern Spain was no longer peaceful. Christian kingdoms from the north were slowly reclaiming lands once ruled by Muslim dynasties. Kingdom after kingdom had fallen. Cities were disappearing. Empires were collapsing. And in the middle of this chaos stood a man named Muhammad I ibn al-Ahmar. He was not the strongest ruler. He was not the richest king. But he was clever. Very clever. Muhammad knew he could not defeat the growing Christian armies through force alone. So instead, he made alliances, paid tributes, and protected the last Muslim kingdom in Spain, the Emirate of Granada. But he needed something more than armies. He needed a symbol. A masterpiece that would tell the world his kingdom still lived. So he climbed Sabika Hill overlooking Granada and looked at the ruins of an old fortress. The walls were red under the setting sun, glowing like fire. And there, he imagined paradise on earth. Construction began almost immediately. Thousands of workers, craftsmen, poets, architects, and artists arrived from across the Islamic world. Stone cutters shaped marble with impossible precision. Engineers designed fountains that moved water through the palace like magic. Calligraphers covered walls with verses and poetry. The palace slowly transformed into something extraordinary. Unlike European castles built to intimidate enemies, the Alhambra was built to inspire wonder. Every wall whispered beauty. Every hallway carried secrets. Every garden felt alive. Water flowed everywhere, through fountains, pools, and narrow channels. In Islamic culture, water symbolized life, purity, and heaven itself. The rulers of Granada wanted visitors to feel as if they had entered paradise. And for many people, it truly felt that way. At sunrise, golden light reflected across still pools like mirrors. At night, lanterns illuminated carved ceilings that looked like stars frozen in stone. Even the air smelled different. Orange blossoms. Roses. Fresh water. Burning incense. Poets who visited the palace wrote that the Alhambra was a pearl set among emeralds. But behind this beauty was a kingdom living in fear. Christian armies continued moving south. Every year, the Nasrid rulers feared invasion. And inside the palace, paranoia grew stronger. The rulers of the Alhambra trusted almost no one. Secret meetings happened in hidden chambers. Political rivals vanished overnight. Royal families fought each other for power. Brothers betrayed brothers. Sons rebelled against fathers. The palace of paradise slowly became a palace of shadows. One ruler was poisoned. Another was assassinated. Another locked his enemies inside prison towers. Yet the palace continued growing more beautiful. That was the strange truth of the Alhambra. As danger increased outside the walls, beauty increased inside them. It was almost as if the rulers were trying to ignore the collapse of their world. One of the most breathtaking places inside the palace became the Court of the Lions. 12 marble lions held a massive fountain in the center. Water flowed through channels in perfect balance. The engineering was centuries ahead of its time. But historians still debate the true meaning of the lions. Some believe they represented power. Others believe they symbolized the 12 tribes of Israel. Some think the fountain carried hidden political messages. The truth may never be known. Because the Alhambra was built with layers of mystery. Its walls are covered with Arabic inscriptions repeating the phrase, "There is no victor but God." Again and again. Hundreds of times. Almost like the rulers were reminding themselves that their kingdom could disappear at any moment. And perhaps deep down, they knew it would. Meanwhile, life inside the palace was both luxurious and dangerous. Musicians performed for royal banquets. Scholars discussed science, astronomy, and philosophy. Silk curtains moved gently in candlelight while guards patrolled silently nearby. But outside the palace gates, ordinary people struggled. Heavy taxes funded the construction. Farmers worked endlessly to support the kingdom. Refugees from conquered cities arrived seeking safety in Granada. The Alhambra became both a refuge and a warning. It represented the final brilliance of Muslim Spain before darkness arrived. And then, the pressure became impossible to ignore. Christian kingdoms united. Powerful rulers Queen Isabella I and King Ferdinand II launched the final campaign against Granada. The last Muslim kingdom in Spain stood alone. Inside the Alhambra, fear spread rapidly. Some nobles wanted surrender. Others demanded war. Families prepared for the worst. And in the middle of this crisis rose the final ruler of Granada. A man history remembers as Muhammad XII. Boabdil inherited not glory, but disaster. He faced rebellion within his own family while Christian armies surrounded his kingdom from outside. His position became almost impossible. Yet he still walked through the magnificent halls of the Alhambra every day, knowing everything around him could soon belong to someone else. Imagine that feeling. To live in the most beautiful palace in the world, while knowing your kingdom is dying. The fountains still flowed. The gardens still bloomed. The walls still shined under sunlight. But the end was coming. And when it arrived, it would change Spain forever. But before we continue to Chapter 2, subscribe to the channel for more hidden historical stories from around the world. Your support helps keep these forgotten stories alive. Because the fall of the Alhambra was not just the end of a palace. It was the end of an entire civilization. Winter covered Granada in silence. Smoke rose from distant villages. Christian banners moved across the hills surrounding the city. Thousands of soldiers tightened their grip around the last Muslim kingdom in Spain. Inside the Alhambra, fear had become impossible to hide. Servants whispered in dark corridors. Royal advisors argued endlessly. Guards stood awake through the night, waiting for news that never seemed good. And at the center of it all stood Boabdil. The last king. The last hope. The last ruler of a civilization that had once ruled most of Spain for centuries. But by 1491, the kingdom was collapsing. The Christian monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella had spent years conquering Muslim territories one by one. Now only Granada remained. And everyone knew the truth. The Alhambra could not survive forever. The siege tightened around the city like a noose. Food became scarce. Fear spread among the people. Refugees crowded the streets. Families prayed desperately for a miracle. But miracles never came. Instead, betrayal arrived. Some nobles secretly negotiated with the Christian rulers. Others blamed Boabdil for the kingdom's failures. Rival factions fought for influence even while enemies waited outside the gates. The palace that once symbolized unity now reflected division. Boabdil himself was trapped between impossible choices. Fight and risk complete destruction. Or surrender and lose everything. Historians say he spent long nights walking through the palace gardens alone. Perhaps he listened to the fountains one last time. Perhaps he stared at the carved walls his ancestors had built. Perhaps he wondered how paradise had turned into a prison. Finally, the decision was made. On January 2, 1492, the gates of Granada opened. Christian forces entered the city peacefully. The Islamic rule of Spain officially ended. For the first time in centuries, crosses replaced crescent banners above the Alhambra. And Boabdil surrendered the palace keys to Ferdinand and Isabella. The moment became one of the most famous scenes in Spanish history. A defeated king handing over a kingdom. But the story did not end there. As Boabdil rode away from Granada with his family, he reached a mountain pass overlooking the city for the final time. There, he stopped. And he looked back at the Alhambra. The palace glowed red beneath the winter sky. The gardens. The towers. The fountains. Everything his ancestors built. Gone. Legend says Boabdil began to cry. And according to the story, his mother told him, "Do not weep like a woman for what you could not defend like a man." Whether those exact words were truly spoken remains uncertain. But the emotional wound was real. Boabdil left Granada forever. And with him disappeared the last Muslim kingdom in Spain. Yet strangely, the Alhambra survived. Many expected the palace to be destroyed after the conquest. Instead, the Christian rulers were stunned by its beauty. Even Ferdinand and Isabella admired the palace deeply. Rooms were preserved. Gardens were protected. The palace remained standing while centuries passed around it. But time slowly wounded the Alhambra anyway. Earthquakes damaged sections of the fortress. Neglect weakened walls. Some parts were abandoned completely. During later wars, invading armies even used parts of the palace as military barracks. At one point, explosives nearly destroyed sections of the complex forever. The palace that once represented paradise came dangerously close to becoming ruins. And then something unexpected happened. Writers. Artists. Travelers. They rediscovered the Alhambra. In the 1800s, American writer Washington Irving visited the palace and became fascinated by its mystery. He stayed inside the ancient rooms and wrote stories inspired by the palace legends. His book, Tales of the Alhambra, helped reintroduce the palace to the world. Suddenly, travelers from across Europe dreamed of seeing the Alhambra with their own eyes. Painters tried capturing its beauty. Poets described it as magical. Historians studied its secrets. And slowly, the palace transformed once again, from a lost kingdom into a global treasure. Today, millions visit the Alhambra every year. They walk through the same halls where kings once feared betrayal. They stand beside fountains that have flowed for centuries. They stare at carvings so detailed they almost seem impossible to create by human hands. But most visitors never realize what the palace truly represents. The Alhambra is not just architecture. It is memory. It is the final heartbeat of a vanished civilization. Every wall tells a story of survival. Every garden remembers the people who once called this place home. The palace survived war, conquest, neglect, earthquakes, and time itself. And perhaps that is why the Alhambra feels different from other monuments. It does not simply show history. It feels haunted by it. Even now, when sunset paints the walls red, the palace almost looks alive again. As if echoes of the past still move through its corridors. As if the voices of forgotten rulers still whisper beneath the sound of flowing water. And maybe, they do. Because some places never truly let go of their history. The Alhambra is one of them. Thank you for watching this story of the Alhambra Palace. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden history behind one of the world's most mysterious places, subscribe to the channel and join us for more untold stories, lost civilizations, forgotten empires, and ancient secrets from around the world. And remember, behind every beautiful place, there is usually a dark story waiting to be discovered.